very excited. I have been attending JFocus for quite a long time, first as an attendee and later on as a speaker. Um, and welcome to the session, Framework Agnostic REST API Testing. So I'm Ixchel Ruiz. I'm a senior software developer and developer advocate at JFrog. So this is kind of me. I'm from Mexico. I live in Switzerland. I work for JFrog and I'm a Java champion. And recently we had our book out, DevOps Tools for Java Developers. And I also help in a bunch of foundations and organizations. So I'm very active in the community, and that's a passion of mine. So why this session? I mean, I'm not going to talk to you about the latest tools ever, but I'm going to tell you about the tools and the features that have saved my professional life more than once. So what do I like? I like open source tools, first of all, standards, and I like very powerful multifaceted tools that actually help us in testing. That's my whole purpose. Testing is so important to me that whenever I hear that people are saying we don't have time, or it's too boring, or it takes a lot of time and resources, I'm, first of all, I think my first reaction is, are you kidding me? Software is ubiquitous. It's in everything. I mean, I came here by plane. I put my life in software. So as a developer, I feel this accountability of providing the best quality software that I can do and providing even more features for my users. The other reason why I'm doing this particular session, why testing, well, testing is important, why REST APIs. So recently there was this the State of Developer Ecosystem made by JetBrains, and it is a survey from almost 32,000 developers, so this is actually important, and all around the world. And the questions that I really focused on was, regardless of what is your architectural style, if it's monoliths or microservices, we are still doing a lot of REST for communicating between our different components. So microservices has been with us like really in full gear for the last 10 years. And at some point, a lot of us have been tempted or actually went into microservices. And some of us, I have seen a lot of sessions about why we tried microservices and went back. It really doesn't matter which architectural style that you're using. The facts, the numbers are there. REST is still very well much used. So again, if we're going to talk or we are going to use, create, consume a lot of REST APIs, when it comes to testing, we should be able to fake the servers, fake the clients, create mocks and stubs. So my session is really going to be really focused or heavily focused on REST Assure, Wiremock, and OpenAPI, and with notable mentions for JMeter and test containers. Yes, I do still talk about JMeter, and I know JMeter has been even longer than I have been in the Java community, but anyway. So one of the reasons why I'm going to talk about them, it's because they are open source, even though they do have like a service or enterprise functionality. The other main topic that I like to talk in this kind of sessions is about design. And sometimes we get things right, and sometimes we make things wrong. For example, what is happening with these doors, push and pull? Like, really, if we want to push, maybe we should give the user the idea that the door is for pushing instead of putting handle. A handle means you're going to grab it and open the door. So we're humans. Sometimes we don't make it right. And when we're designing, there are two things that come into mind. How do we design? Even at what time do proper designs come into place? And I can tell you about a lot of technologies that have come into our worlds by custom, by ways of using things, instead of someone sitting down and designing and thinking about what are the pros, what are the cons, what is really required, what is the most or the minimum most important model that we have to achieve. So this is something that we know that it should be happen before we decide to establish a communication or a collaboration between two different components. We should at least sit down and say, what do you require from me? And as soon as we get into this conversation of what do you require from me, we can design better. And usually when we have this solid design, our evolution on our APIs is easier. But as I said, sometimes as developer, we code first and go into deeper thought later. And the other thing that I have noticed in all my years as a consultant is that our documentation, our definition, and the implementation sometimes do not match. Sometimes our documentation is too far away from our code and things are not as they are supposed to be, or they are reacting in a different way as they are supposed to react. Standards. So when we are talking about REST APIs, there are a lot of tools out there to document them, to test them. The one hopefully you are already using is OpenAPI. And they have released, we're actually in the specification version 3.10. This is the page, OpenAPIs. And this is a work of a foundation. And one of the key interests of this foundation was to define an language agnostic interface. So we could understand the capabilities without access to the source code or documentation. So it had to be technical, vendor neutral, portable, and open. And the OpenAPI started in 2017. So they have been out there quite for a long time. And if you are using the OpenAPI to specify your REST APIs, I have good news for you. There's a lot of tools out there, from generating the server, from generating the client, for improving your documentation, the validation. There are even the DSLs on top of that, or editors. And there are tools that really work really nice into mocking them out of the box. So what you can do is take your specification and ask some services out there to create your mocks or your stops. So it's really worth it. This is Swagger, the Swagger editor, and as you can see, you can generate the servers, generate the clients. You can test it if you are using Swagger also for documenting your APIs. And you actually enable Spring Boot has a really nice integration with it. You can test them on the spot, on your own servers. So that's really cool. And Swagger actually, they started with all this concept way before OpenAPI. So they actually donated part of their code and their tools to the OpenAPI Foundation. So let's start it with my favorite tool. Who here uses Wiremock already? Okay, few hands. I hope I can show you something new. I hope I am. And let me tell you why I'm so excited about Wiremock. Well, one of the things I'm really excited about Wiremock is, as I said, there is Mock Lab where you can use it directly to create your own mocks from your OpenAPI specification. So Wiremock has this, but in the paid, in the enterprise version. So just beware. So Wiremock, they recently went into a new revamp their site, so now it looks cool. And people said that there is, or Wiremock is a mock server, but people say that usually also works for stubbing. And one of the things that I like about Wiremock is that you can start it in the standard process. And I will show you why I like it even more. And you can make the request in JSON format, or you can do them in Java. Here at least it's a very compressed, and I cannot show you, it's a very, the pointer. It's a very compressed definition of a Wiremock and stuff, and you can also define them with JSON. And actually, I'm going only to explain a little bit, and we jump to the demo. I have tons of demo for you. So this is how you configure the port in the first one. The second one is you can do a record and map. So this will create two folders, basically, the mappings and the files with all your requests and all the resources for each of one of those calls. You can verify all your mappings. You can replay after recording. And what about, let's do it. Why should I wait until the end? So here I have, well, some of the commands, because I type very slow sometimes, but I'm using the Wiremock version 2.33.2, which is the latest. So if I go into my command, record and map, oh, see, that's why so the record and map, what it's going to do is what I show you in the slides. It's going to do a Java jar, starts the jar, and proxy all my requests from Wiremock into record mappings. That's all what it's going to do. So I'm going to run that one. And then it's running. So whatever I request, and let me open Chrome here. Eventually, and I will use this one. Sorry. And I'm going into incognito, so we don't have anything there. So if I go to localhost, and let's double check where it's running. It's actually running in the standard port. I didn't change that. So if I go to the localhost 8080, it's actually proxying to the Wiremock. And the other thing that I need is to start recording, because this is not only proxying, it's actually record. Oh my goodness! And then I get nervous, and then I forget everything. Okay. See, then I will show you why do I have those. Okay, I'm going to, sorry. Sorry, don't worry. Projects, demos, Wiremock. There you go, and then we make this bigger so you can see, and I will see command, open recorder. Thank you very much. So I don't have to worry about that, as you can see. And in the recorder, you have to specify what is the URL that you are going to start recording. And in this case, I'm going to say that I'm going to start recording Wiremock. Once I said that I want to start Wiremock, where was it? Sorry, this one. here, whenever I start doing like record and mapping, record request, let me see, what are we doing? Record request. The only problem that usually you have is that as you can see, I only curling the running standalone. So what I did wrong here, it was I need to do the docs and stop record, and then let's run it again. Now it's working. See, I was targeting a different URL. Please check that. Probably you're not going to be super nervous when you're doing this to your machine and nobody's watching what you're doing. So what I'm doing is recording the different requests, and we will see them here. I should have shown you that if I stop now this recording, I make those curl calls to my local host to actually trigger a request on a specific URL. And as soon as I press stop, here I can see that I now have two mappings, one for the request matching, because that was actually what I requested from the from my proxy and from the running standalone. So now if I wanted to modify inside the mappings, for example, docs running standalone, if I wanted to modify this in the body, like for example, if I wanted to change everything that says, for example, Wiremock to, oh my god, and I record this, and then I run again my Wiremock, but this time only with replay. Whenever I request again into my Chrome, into my local host 8080. Now I shouldn't docs open Wiremock. Let me turn my network off, and I can show you the standalone. Localhost, sorry. Let me double check that. We are running the replay, yes, in 8080, the banner, and let's go again here. I have my that one, configuration, the setup, running as a standalone. I didn't record that one, but I record the other one, which was also the request matching. So stubbing, request matching, no, nothing is there. This is super weird. I just tested it before. So let me double check. I don't have network, I'm running this. Let me open it again in the Chrome with incognito. So file, new incognito window, localhost, 8080. It's Wiremock, perfect. Wiremock open source, configuration, running, no. Okay, I actually don't know what is happening, but the whole point is, and it's going to be such a silly thing, I know it. It's going to be such a silly thing. I should be serving all my mappings, and I should be serving it with all the different values that I have changed. So that is one of the things I really like about Wiremock. If you are trying to do the record and replay, it's really simple. The other thing that you can do, and and I will go really super fast with this demos, and I will try then to do them in my machine, is you can also use curl to persist some of these mappings. And this is the most trivial one. You are creating a mapping with get and send text plain. So this is easy. The other one is you can create with JSON data and return an array of JSON data, and you can test it like this. You can also create URL patterns, and it is super easy to actually require something else. For example, whenever you create this mapping and you do request the local host 8080 get, instead of whatever, you really use any string from A to Z, you will get the same pattern. You can also get body patterns. You actually need to generate a request with a specific body pattern, and then it will tell you that it's okay. The other one is you can actually simulate delays, either fixed by log normal distributions or randoms, or different types of distributions. I actually have an example in Java that I know it works. So we will see that in Java. The other thing that you can do is generate errors. So you can generate a specific mapping or endpoint that is bringing you different kind of errors. You can also check how many of this have been requested. You can reset all the counts on your request. When you are actually requesting different types of actually, it's still running. Let's create the ones from scratch. Yes. So here I'm going to create only, for example, using delays. Using delays, and this is actually working, as you can see. Let me tell you why. What I'm executing, we said using delays. So what I'm only here creating is what you saw in the slide. So I'm creating a curl with variables data with a method get and a slash delayed. I'm saying fixed delayed in seconds, 2000 milliseconds. So those 2 seconds, I only curl the URL to 8080 and get the delayed, and I'm only timing in. So every single time that we executed, it's going to be like 2 seconds, and that's it. If I now say 3, still this mapping is not being persisted. So I need to say that it has to be persisted. This is I'm going to show that in the Java examples. So if now I create the uniform delay, no, the random is it's easier to see. The random, I created the mapping and I run it 3 times. As you can see, it's a different one. So if I now check what is happening in the random, it's nothing very sophisticated. It's using a delay distribution and log normal with median and sigma. And these are all the things that I can show you in the command line with curl, which is actually really nice. Adding a pattern. Actually, let's do that. The adding a pattern. And let's see what is this doing. This is the one that I show you. It's the A and C. And it will have whatever and AAA, and both of them return you the body that it was created. Here we can see it. So it's very polyphacetic. What it's going to create is all the mappings. If I start them persistent, they will be created inside the mappings and the file. Why do I like this? Because if you are working with a front-end team, even before, as soon as you define your contract, you can create these files by hand, or the different tools that I show you with OpenAPI. You can bundle this inside a Docker container and send them to them, so that your front-end team doesn't need to know anything about anything and just run the Docker container, and they will have a mock of all the services that you agree with them. This is what I like, and even a front-end developer or any developer or any person can actually modify these JSON files and create whatever answers that they want. Because as soon as the Wiremock starts in a replay mode, it will actually load all these files and start working. And one of the things that I really, really like is to introduce them like delayed responses or false responses, because all the teams have to know how to react to either being delayed or any error during the execution. So it's why I love it. Now, let's see the code. So I prepare here several examples. This is a project with all my examples. Doesn't have anything really sophisticated. This is a Maven project, and I'm using this version. So rest assured is 5.01. I'm using Wiremock 2.27.2, and well, if we will have time, yes, for sure, and I will show you test containers and my other favorite project, test containers. So this are the version that we're using. They are the latest one. The examples that I want to show you are very, very trivial, and please don't do this at home, because what am I doing here? I'm using Wiremock and rest assured. What does that mean? I'm faking the server, I'm faking the client. So what I'm testing, nothing at all, because everything here is faked. What I want to try to show you by faking the server and faking the client is how easy to do to fake one or the other. In this case, the example actually fits in one single page, which is something that I really, really love. So what am I doing here? I'm using Wiremock. I'm configuring in the different ports. You also can configure to use HTTPS. You only have to add the certificate into your key store, so that's covered. You can actually create the Wiremock servers with different options. In this case, the only option that I am adding is the server port. I'm starting the Wiremock before all the tests. That's okay, because they are very, very trivial in this case. And set up the stop. In setting up the stop, and when after all I tear down, I stop the server. So don't let anything running. So what I'm doing here, and I'm doing them in Groovy, is because creating JSON objects is really simple. But it's not that complicated in Java, so I could have gone with Java too. So what I'm doing is creating an object, a pet, and I'm creating my mapping, the JSON pet, and I'm saying like when you are create a stop in this mapping and a result content explain and write in the body. What I'm doing later on is checking that I get in JSON pet the 200, but because I didn't specify as a return value in XML, I will have 404 in the XML. And I'm also testing that I really, really, really get whatever I specify in my object. In this case, is cookie, 1 year, ball, and a bear. That's it. So if I run these tests, they should, oh, sorry, I shouldn't have done that. It's not needed. No, if I run this test, sorry. If I run this test, it should be green. So that means that everything that our assertions were completed. So that was a trivial one. Actually, every single one is trivial, but I'm trying to show you different other things. This one is very similar. The only difference is I'm going to change the stuff at some point. And I'm using a different identifier. And this is what I said. The previous one were not recorded because I didn't ask them to be persisted. So now they have to be persisted. And with that UUID, I can change them at any time. So in this case, what I'm going to create is I'm going to create the setup stop. When I set up the stop, after test that I'm getting whatever I want, the doggy, and then I change the stop, and when I'm changing the stop, I'm only changing the body and saying modified. So now if I run this test, which it is happening. So perfect. I mean, the results are really not interesting as much because it doesn't provide a lot of information on that regard. Let's see another very, very trivial one. But in this one, I'm going to create or one that actually expects a text in the body. So this is what I'm already persistent, and this is something that I wanted to show you. Oh, no, because I'm in a different folder. Sorry for that. You cannot see them persisted here. It's actually here. In my resources, you can see at the beginning this was created, the mapping and the files. The mappings, these mappings are being created whenever I execute the tests. Inside resources, I have identified where they need to be. And so I'm going to persist it, and with a request body. So you have to send some search results in the request body, and it will actually happen. And what we're doing here in the test is verifying that if you do the request with XML, it's happening, and if you don't do it with XML, it's not going to happen. It's not match. So if I run this test, let me show you again the two tests. So when I'm doing the request with the XML, it's found. When I'm doing it with not, it's not matched. Okay. The next example. In this one, oh, this is the delay fix that we already saw in the JSON mapping that we created directly with curl. This is exactly the same. It's a fixed delay of 2 milliseconds. If I change it to more, for example, if I change here to 4 and I run it, obviously it will take more time, and the test, oh, I'd say more than 2,000, more than 5,000 then it's going to fail. Or so I hope. What happened? Fixed delay of 400, and this is the get fixed delayed. Assert response time, it's more than 4,000. Oh, thank you very much. I didn't run the correct test. Thank you. So now it has to be read, but because you should never trust a test that you haven't seen failed. So thank you very much. So we will leave it in 4,000, and now I'm running the right test. And it should be green. So very, it's my personal preference, and as you can see, those are the other mappings. They didn't appear at first. I blame I blame the timing in my machine, because sometimes they don't appear, but if I were to again to my command line, they will be there in the mappings. So that's okay. Then this one, it is a random one, that one that I also show you. And again, I'm running the same test because of course Ixchel is not running the new tests. And this is also should work. Oh no, this is not working. Test number 5. Let's see why. So what did I change? Oh, it was, yes, of course. This has a chance to pass and not pass because it's random with a long normal relay of 1,000. So there is a variability. And in this case, it was less than 2,000. So very, very random. So to make it run all the time, it is this one. and then it's working. The other thing that I really like, and probably you have seen it, is that you can use matchers or handlebars. For example, this one, and I will show you before. And I will make it first fail, so you see it with the asserts the result, and I'm running the entire number. Yes, this is the right test. So now, as you can see, I was expecting hello world, but what I actually got from the response is hello world. What is happening here? I'm actually, when I'm setting up the stop, I'm saying wherever you get in the request path, you will capitalize it. So I'm creating a request path in the first element of the request path, which is world, and I'm capitalizing it. So this is why actually it expects hello world. So if I put here hello world 2, then first let me show you that this actually works. Hello world. And later on we will play with it. So if I run it again, it actually does what it's supposed to be doing, which is hello world. Now if I modify my request path and say hello world 2, when I execute this test again, it's going to fail because it is actually expecting, and this is something that I wanted to show you since the beginning. So Wiremock is telling me the request was not found. This is the one that it was requested, and the closest that you have in your persisted mappings or in the runtime mappings is that one. So I was expecting hello world capitalized, but what I got instead was, I cannot see it. It was only the enter. So now I know that I can ask for hello world. Actually, I didn't find anything. Let's create now hello world 2. And now I'm expecting hello world, and now I got the hello world 2. So I can modify now my expectation, and what I'm going to get is the capitalized version of the request path in the first element. So now with all these changes, it should be working. Let me reduce that again. And now it's working because I'm capitalizing hello world 2, I'm requesting hello world 2, and I'm checking that hello world 2 also works. So as you can see, you can actually grab whatever part of the headers, the cookies, the paths, the body, and modify it really easy. The other things that you can do, and for that we can see the documentation of Wiremock, is also modifying. Yes, I don't have network. Perfect. Well, you can also use different functionalities, for example, for date and time. And I do have an example for that one, if we cannot see the documentation. So in this time, when I create the stuff now, I can use now and the offset for 2 years. And this is how also easily you can calculate something. So in this case, what I'm going to do is execute, not debug, stop and rerun. Execute it, and we will have a green test, but also with a difference of offset. So it's checking that actually the date, the year is correct, only the date, because obviously if I wanted to do equals at the time of the execution, it's not the same time as the verification. So it's more or less okay. The other example that I wanted to show you was with test containers. as I mentioned before, you can create your Wiremock mappings with JSON, with curl. It will persist them in your files and your mappings, and you can give that in a Docker container to somebody else, to another team. In this case, when I start using Docker containers, one of the tools that I really, really like to use, again and again, is test containers. Because now, in case or for whatever reason you are not instrumenting your Wiremock from Java, but you still have all the mappings of the file already running in a container, you can use test containers to enable or to run that particular container and execute your tests as before. And in this case, this is a very trivial test container example, and I actually went instead with a Wiremock with the mappings with a Postgres, because I think this is going to be more familiar to you. Again, this is only one file. What I'm doing is creating a Postgres test container. And who here has heard about test containers? Okay, not a lot of people. Maybe I should tell you about that. Well, first of all, we're going to run it, and later on I can tell you all about that. So while it runs, and yes, I had my Docker desktop running, so as you can see, it's a green test. And in the test, I'm not doing anything sophisticated. I have a repository, and I'm configuring that repository with whatever port the Docker container is giving to my test. So this is important. Test containers allow you to run any container, and one of the things that they remove from our minds as developers of writing tests is the orchestration or the configuration of all that. They will take care, test containers will take care of the configuration of all your ports, and if you want to surrender them the configuration of users, password, that is happening. For example, if you're running several tests in parallel, you don't have to, because you're not using Docker Compose even for a complex set of orchestration of services. Docker test containers, what it's going to do is start them in different ports, and they will manage that this different ports and provide them that information via system properties of environment variables. And at the end of each test, even if they were successful or failing, there is a third container, well, an extra container, because it doesn't matter how many you started, an extra container called Ryuk. Ryuk, for the ones that like manga, know that it comes from the Death Note. So he actually will take care of disposing of all your resources after all the containers have been used, either if the test failed or not. So that is one of the features that I like the most about test containers, that you never have dangling services away, even on top of not worrying about ports, not worrying about configuration. And for example, even the test containers team has taken into consideration security. Like when you start a container and you are in the mindset of testing, you need to mind your surroundings. You need to understand that, for example, a Postgres database will take a little bit of time from it was spin the image to the service inside it's ready to listen or to react. So they are taking into consideration some of those health checks to verify that in a specific Docker container that have been a spin-off, it's ready to take or to run the test. For example, this test seems trivial. It is trivial. I have in my project, in the Java part, this is just, I have my repository with an item, a pollo, and when I'm doing the the Postgres test, I'm passing and I'm actually listening to all the configuration that the Postgres SQL container is giving me, from the JDBC URL to the username and the password. And I'm just executing one specific save or insert into my repository, and then I'm only requesting that same element. So everything that happened during that test, and you will see it here, because when I'm actually starting my container, I'm actually saying that I really want to have the log4j consumer to the logger. So all the story of what is happening is here, and as you can see, it's going to connect to my desktop Docker client. It will try to download the image. It will start my image, and it will be listening to the logs. And as soon as it knows that it has been responding, it will actually seed my database. And after seeding my database, it will actually run the test. So all of this is being done by the test and test containers. So let's go back to the slides. The version of I was using at rest assured, and I think I went too fast on the POM file, is 501. This is the latest. As you can see, it provides a DSL that it's very, very interesting and very, very easy to use for faking the clients. You can check response codes, you can check cookies, headers, everything from the different requests and the different verbs. And I show you test containers, and it runs all this. Containers are really well configured by the test containers guys. So you can run, for example, Oracle, Neo4j, MySQL, CouchDB. They are running on version 1.16.3 at this moment. They also even added now support for K3s Lite modules. And my other shout out is for JMeter. What I love about JMeter is that it allows you to use script samplers. For example, all the Groovy, as you saw, I really like Groovy. For example, it allows you to modify also the headers with a little bit more logic that allows Wiremock. In Wiremock, you have these functionalities to do modifications or transformation with string templating, but JMeter allows you to use different script languages to modify with more logic. So for example, in this particular case, in one of my clients examples or projects, what we need to do, there was quite a transformation in one of the headers for verification and communication purposes. So the only way to do load testing, that it was not enough to use a record and replay, you needed to have some kind of really communication, custom communication, was through JMeter, and was through this particular functionality of using different programming languages to create them. They are in version 5.5. As I said, JMeter has been long with us, and the last version, what they did was to update only the log4j version to 1.2.6 to something more recent. And I'm so sorry for the technical problems that I have at the beginning, and yes, that's it. I hope for the ones that I already knew about Wiremock, I showed, or at least I told you, some functionality that it's well worth looking into consideration. For the ones that didn't know about test containers, I totally urge you to take the time to learn a little bit more about it. It's actually a really, really good tool out there. And as Wiremock, as I said, it has its own enterprise version where you can pay for example, from OpenAPI, jumping directly into your mocks or stubs. Test containers also has a paying capability that it's running the tests or running the containers in their cloud and just interacting with your test. which in the case of the M1s can actually save lives because some of the Docker images doesn't run on M1. And yes, that's a bummer. Well, thank you very much.